"Daddy, I think my teacher is still inside the cupboard." The words replayed in Ethan's head like a broken recording as he stumbled out of the school's art hut, choking on the smell of rot and vomit. His hands trembled so violently that the keys slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the pavement. Inside the cupboard was the dried corpse of Mrs. Baker, folded like a broken doll, locked in darkness for 6 entire weeks. And his 6-year-old daughter had done it. Or at least, that's what he thought. The cold September wind hit Ethan's face, but it did nothing to stop the sweat pouring down his neck. Children's laughter echoed from the playground nearby. Tiny innocent voices, shoes squeaking, teachers calling names. Normal sounds. But inside that hut, hidden only a few feet away from those children, death had been rotting all summer. Ethan bent over beside the wall and vomited again. His stomach burned. His mind screamed, "No, no, no, no. This can't be real. Hilda couldn't do this. She was sweet, gentle, quiet. The kind of child who cried when stepping on insects by accident." But then he remembered her smile in the car. I locked the door. That cheerful little laugh suddenly sounded horrifying in his memory. Ethan wiped his mouth and forced himself to breathe. Think. If he called the police now, they would investigate everything. The cupboard, the lock, the last day of school. Eventually someone would ask the children questions, and Hilda would tell them. Children always told the truth. His daughter's life would be destroyed before it even began. He staggered back into the art hut. The smell hit him harder this time. Sweet, rotten, wet decay mixed with urine and mold. Flies buzzed lazily near the ceiling. Mrs. Baker's dead eyes stared directly at him. Except, Ethan froze. Her eyes were gone. Not empty sockets. Gone. Something wet moved inside one of them. Maggots. He gagged violently again. Then he noticed something else. Scratches. Deep, bloody scratches covered the inside of the cupboard door. Long, desperate marks. Mrs. Baker had tried to claw her way out. For days. Maybe weeks. Ethan covered his mouth as tears streamed down his face. Oh God. Then he saw the message, written on the wooden wall beside the body. Help me. The letters were dark brown. Dried blood. His knees almost gave out. She had been alive. Locked inside. Begging for help while the school emptied for summer vacation. Ethan backed away in horror. But suddenly, thud. He jumped. A sound came from outside the hut. Footsteps. Slow footsteps crunching gravel. Someone was coming. Ethan slammed the cupboard shut and wiped his face quickly just as the door creaked open. A woman stood there. Tall, thin, gray cardigan, sharp eyes. Mrs. Gibson, Hilda's new teacher. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mrs. Gibson smiled. But there was something wrong with the smile. Something empty. "I thought I heard someone in here," she said softly. Ethan tried to steady his voice. "My daughter forgot her coat." Mrs. Gibson's eyes drifted toward the cupboard. For one terrifying second, Ethan thought she somehow knew. Then she looked back at him. "You're Hilda's father, aren't you?" "Yes. She talks about you a lot." Something cold crept up Ethan's spine. "How nice," he muttered. Mrs. Gibson stepped further inside the hut. The smell should have been unbearable by now, but she didn't react to it at all, not even slightly. Instead, she whispered something strange. "Children tell interesting secrets, don't they?" Ethan's heart nearly stopped. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Gibson tilted her head. "She told me what happened to Mrs. Baker." Silence. Absolute silence. Even the flies seemed to stop buzzing. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. "What did she say?" Mrs. Gibson smiled wider. "She said Mrs. Baker screamed for 3 days before the scratching stopped." Ethan's entire body went numb. Then Mrs. Gibson leaned closer. "And your daughter said she went back to listen every day." "Sometimes," Mrs. Gibson whispered. Hilda said she could still hear breathing inside the cupboard, even after Mrs. Baker stopped talking. Ethan couldn't move. Mrs. Gibson stood inches away from him inside the foul-smelling art hut, her pale face calm, while the corpse rotted behind the cupboard door. She listened. Ethan whispered. Mrs. Gibson nodded slowly. She said the crying was funny at first. The room suddenly felt freezing cold. "No," Ethan muttered. "You're lying." But deep down, he already knew she wasn't. Because strange things about Hilda had always existed. Tiny things. Easy things to ignore. The way she sometimes talked to empty rooms. The way she knew things she shouldn't know. The way neighborhood pets seemed terrified of her. At the time, Ethan had laughed them off. Kids are weird. But now, Now his daughter was connected to a woman who had died screaming in darkness. Mrs. Gibson stepped closer to the cupboard and gently rested her hand on it, almost lovingly. "You know the worst part?" she whispered. Ethan's throat tightened. She might have survived if someone had opened the door sooner. A violent shiver ran through him. "Stop." Mrs. Gibson ignored him. She scratched until her fingernails tore off. Then she started using her teeth. Ethan felt bile rise into his throat again. "How do you know all this?" Mrs. Gibson looked at him strangely. "Because I heard her." Silence. A fly landed on the desk between them. Ethan stared at the woman. "You weren't even here during summer." Mrs. Gibson smiled faintly. "Yes, I was." Something about the way she said it made Ethan's skin crawl. Then, creak. A sound echoed from inside the cupboard. Both of them froze. Ethan's heart nearly exploded. The sound came again. Slow scratching. From inside. His breathing stopped completely. That's impossible. Mrs. Baker was dead. Ethan had seen her body. But the scratching continued. Soft. Weak. Desperate. Mrs. Gibson tilted her head toward the cupboard like she was listening to music. "She still does that sometimes," she whispered. Ethan stumbled backward. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Suddenly, the scratching stopped. Then came another sound. A tiny voice. "Mr. Carter." Ethan's blood turned to ice. That voice. It sounded exactly like Hilda. "Mr. Carter, please let me out." His knees almost buckled. "No." The voice came again. Weak crying now. "Daddy." Ethan rushed forward before his brain could stop him and yanked the cupboard door open. Mrs. Baker's corpse spilled halfway onto the floor with a wet cracking sound. Maggots poured from her mouth. The smell became unbearable. But there was nobody else inside. No child. No Hilda. Only darkness and decay. Ethan backed away in horror. Then he noticed something new. The scratches on the wall had changed. There were more of them now. Fresh ones. His stomach dropped. That wasn't possible. Mrs. Baker's fingers were skeletal stumps. She couldn't scratch anymore. Mrs. Gibson suddenly spoke behind him. "Sometimes the dead stay hungry." Ethan spun around. "What are you talking about?" But Mrs. Gibson's attention wasn't on him anymore. She was staring out the hut window toward the playground, toward the children, especially Hilda. A strange smile slowly spread across her face. "She's very special," Mrs. Gibson whispered. Ethan's chest tightened. "What do you mean special?" Mrs. Gibson looked at him again. "When children hear the dead start hearing them too." Before Ethan could respond, a loud scream echoed outside. Both of them rushed to the window. Children were running across the playground in panic. Teachers shouted. One little boy stood frozen near the swings, crying hysterically. Blood covered his hands. And hanging from the monkey bars above him, a dead crow swung gently in the wind. Its body had been ripped open. Its insides dangled onto the sand below. The children screamed louder. But Ethan's eyes locked onto one thing only. Hilda. She stood near the fence, completely motionless, smiling at the dead bird. Then slowly, very slowly, she looked directly at her father and raised one blood-covered finger to her lips, telling him to stay quiet. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. Rain hammered against the windows while darkness swallowed the house whole. Every creak of wood made his heart jump. Every shadow looked wrong. And upstairs, Hilda was awake. He could hear her, walking slowly across her bedroom floor. Back and forth, back and forth. At first, Ethan tried convincing himself it was normal. Kids had nightmares. Kids sleepwalked. But at 2:13 a.m., the whispering started. Soft, unclear, like two people having a conversation through a wall. Ethan sat upright in bed. His blood ran cold when he realized one thing. Hilda wasn't talking alone. Another voice answered her. A woman's voice. Wet, cracking, painful. He forced himself out of bed and slowly stepped into the hallway. The house was freezing. The air smelled strange now, damp wood mixed with something rotten. The whispers stopped. Silence. Then, thump. Something hit Hilda's bedroom wall. Ethan grabbed the doorknob with trembling fingers and pushed the door open. Hilda. Moonlight spilled across the room. His daughter stood beside her bed wearing her white pajamas, staring directly into the corner of the room. At nothing. Or at least, Ethan prayed it was nothing. Hilda, he whispered again. She slowly turned toward him. Her face looked pale, too pale, and her eyes looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Daddy, she said softly, she's angry tonight. A cold wave swept through Ethan's chest. Who is? Hilda pointed toward the corner. The cupboard lady. Ethan's stomach tightened. There was nothing there, only darkness. But then he heard it. Breathing. Not Hilda's breathing. Something deeper. Raspy. Wet. Coming from the corner itself. Ethan grabbed Hilda immediately and backed toward the door. "What did you do?" he whispered desperately. "Tell me the truth." Hilda's expression changed. For the first time since he'd known her. She looked afraid. I opened the cupboard again. Ethan froze. "What?" After I locked her inside. His pulse exploded. "No. Hilda, you said you left." She kept crying. Hilda interrupted quietly. "So I went back after everyone left school." The room suddenly felt smaller. "What happened?" Hilda looked down at the floor. At first she was nice. Ethan felt sick. She asked me to open the door. She promised she wouldn't tell anyone. Rain slammed violently against the windows. But then she got scary. Hilda's voice trembled now. She started scratching the door really hard. She said she could hear something inside the walls. Ethan stopped breathing. "What do you mean inside the walls?" She said something was moving in there. The corner of the bedroom creaked softly. Both of them looked toward it instantly. The breathing returned. Closer now. Slow. Heavy. Ethan grabbed a baseball bat leaning beside the dresser and stepped toward the darkness. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But Hilda was his daughter. He had to protect her. "Who's there?" he shouted. Silence. Then, scratch. The sound came from inside the wall. Ethan's blood turned to ice. Another scratch followed. Long. Dragging. Like fingernails scraping wood from the other side. Hilda started crying. She said it talked to her. The scratching became louder. Scrape. Dust drifted down from the wall. Ethan backed away slowly. "No." Then the wallpaper bulged outward. Something underneath pushed against it. A human-shaped outline. Tall. Twisted. Trying to force itself through. Hilda screamed. The wall burst open with a deafening crack. And Mrs. Baker crawled out. Or something wearing Mrs. Baker's skin. Her body bent unnaturally, bones snapping as she dragged herself across the floor. Her mouth hung open too wide, stretching almost to her ears. Inside her throat, something moved. A second face, screaming silently beneath her skin. Ethan grabbed Hilda and ran. Behind them, Mrs. Baker slammed herself against the hallway walls like a wild animal, crawling faster than any human possibly could. The lights exploded one by one. Pop, pop, pop. Darkness swallowed the house. Then came Mrs. Baker's voice from the shadows. "You left me hungry." Ethan slammed the bedroom door behind them and shoved his body against it as something smashed into the other side. Bang! The entire frame shook. Hilda screamed into his chest while the lights downstairs flickered violently. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the hallway ceiling like black fingers crawling toward them. Another impact hit the door. Bang! Wood cracked near the handle. Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't possible. Dead people didn't crawl through walls. Dead teachers didn't chase children through houses. But the horrible scratching outside the room was real. And so was the wet breathing. "Oh God," Ethan whispered. Hilda clutched his shirt tightly. "Daddy," she brought the thing with her. The thing. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, the scratching stopped completely. Silence filled the hallway. That silence felt worse. Far worse. Then came a new sound. Knocking. Soft. Gentle. Tap. 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 A woman's voice floated through the door. "Ethan." Mrs. Baker. Except her voice sounded wrong now. Like multiple people speaking together. "I just want to talk." Hilda buried her face deeper into his chest. "She lies," she whispered. Ethan slowly backed away from the door, gripping the baseball bat so tightly his hands hurt. Then he heard footsteps downstairs. Heavy footsteps. Not Mrs. Baker's crawling. These sounded human. The front door creaked open below. A few seconds later, "Mr. Carter?" "Mrs. Gibson." Ethan's stomach dropped instantly. "Everything okay up there?" The knocking outside the bedroom stopped. Complete silence. Then both women laughed together. One downstairs, one outside the bedroom. The exact same laugh. Ethan nearly collapsed from fear. "No," he whispered. Hilda started crying harder. "Daddy," it copied her. Something slammed against the bedroom window suddenly. Ethan turned and almost screamed. Mrs. Baker's face pressed against the second-floor glass from outside. Impossible. Her neck bent at a horrifying angle while her dead white eyes stared directly into him. Then the glass cracked. Spiderweb fractures spread slowly across the window. Behind him, the bedroom door creaked open by itself. Ethan spun around. The The hallway outside was completely dark, but he could hear crawling, fast crawling, coming toward them. He grabbed Hilda and ran into the attached bathroom just as the bedroom window exploded inward behind them. Glass shattered everywhere. Mrs. Baker shrieked with an inhuman scream that sounded like dozens of starving voices trapped together. Ethan locked the bathroom door. His entire body shook violently now. What is happening to us? Hilda looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. She told me she wasn't alone in the cupboard. Ethan stared at her. What? The scratching inside the walls wasn't her. A loud crash came from the bedroom. Furniture splintered apart. Then came the crawling again. Closer, slowly circling the bathroom. Hilda continued speaking between sobs. She said something lived under the school. Ethan felt sick. What kind of something? Hilda's tiny voice trembled. She called it the Hollow Mother. The bathroom light suddenly died. Darkness swallowed them whole. Then Ethan heard breathing directly beside his ear. Not Hilda's. A whisper slithered through the darkness. She opened the door for me. Ethan swung the baseball bat wildly. Crack. A horrible scream erupted inches away. The lights flickered back on for half a second, and Ethan saw it. Not Mrs. Baker. Not human. A massive pale creature crouched upside down on the ceiling above them. Its body looked stretched together from different people's skin. Long black hair hung toward the floor, while dozens of human arms twitched beneath its torso. And in the center of its chest, Mrs. Baker's face screamed endlessly. The lights died again. Hilda shrieked. Something grabbed Ethan's ankle in the darkness and dragged him violently across the bathroom floor. His fingernails tore against the tiles as he fought desperately. Hilda, run. But Hilda didn't run. Instead, the crying suddenly stopped. Complete silence. Then Ethan heard his daughter speak in a calm voice that didn't sound like her own anymore. You can have him now. The creature stopped moving. Ethan froze. Slowly, the bathroom light flickered back on. Hilda stood motionless near the sink, smiling. Behind her stood dozens of shadowy figures crowded inside the tiny bathroom. Children, rotting children, all staring directly at Ethan. And every single one whispered the same thing together. She brought us home. Like, subscribe, and comment if you would open the cupboard or leave it locked forever.